Hey everybody, today we have the privilege of speaking with Lindsay French of Images in French Photography. She is one of my closest friends and a phenomenal photographer. She has a keen eye for natural beauty, as you can see on her website, and capturing the essence of a family. Hey Lindsay, thanks for joining me.
Hi, sure.
Hey, I've got a quick question for you. Why do your pictures look so much better than mine?
Because it's me, Eric.
Oh, right, that's what it is, right?
No, there's something to be said for editing a photo, framing a photo appropriately. When people are looking at taking a photo, there's multiple different things you can look at as you're setting up your shot. You want to have everything appropriately framed within your view of whatever on your camera or your phone. So in other words, look at what's around your subject. Look at the things that are framing your subject in the photo. Composition is a big part of photography. So if you can include some things around your subject that appropriately frame them, like a doorway, an archway. If you're outdoors, you can look for tree branches. You can look for all kinds of natural features that would add something to framing your subject, and it actually makes them pop a little bit and it draws the eye to your subject. So
Okay.
that's one way. Another way is after you have your photo taken, whether you're using a DSLR camera, whether you're using a phone or a point and shoot camera, there are ways that you can modify your photos via some light editing to make things a little bit brighter. You can darken it. Even on a phone, the cameras on phones today are phenomenal. You can add contrast. You can change the colors a little bit to enhance warmth or coolness to give the photo a tone or a mood. So lots of different things you can play with, even on a phone, that'll make your photos look a little bit better.
Oh, I guess that's the foundation of Instagram. All they care about is pictures and filters, right? How do
Yeah.
I know which one to pick though? Because there's a million of them and I'm like, for me, it's color and black and white. Apparently I'm not very discerning.
Play with it. The more things you try and the more things that you look at, you kind of decide which ones you like better. Everyone seems to have their own personal preferences. It's like ice cream. Chocolate's really good to some people. Strawberry's really good to some people. I prefer warmth to my photos. I tend to schedule my photography sessions to reflect the golden hour, which is right around sunset, typically maybe the hour or so before sunset. And the light is very warm, it's very flattering. There's no harshness coming at you from a higher up angle. So it just tends to add a little bit of warmth to the overall tone of the photo. And if you don't have that, like if you're taking a photo on a cloudy day, for instance, and you don't have that warm golden hour sunlight, there's filters you can add to add that little bit of warmth. So you kind of have to just choose what you want the photo to look like and find an appropriate filter. I know Instagram has about 100 of them and you can scroll through and try every single one if you want to.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'd probably get lost spending hours upon hours doing that. And Stacy would say, like, are you even working? Arguably not. No. Are there any filters I should absolutely stay away from? Because like I've tried I've tried playing with a couple of them, and sometimes it comes out looking out really really goofy. Like what? How about this? What's an obvious sign of an amateur when I take a photo and you're like, oh my goodness, Eric, you should have just left it raw and not did anything to it. That was a mistake.
Too much of any one thing tends to be a mistake.
Okay.
So unless you're really going for a photo with a ton of contrast, you really don't want to add too much contrast. A little bit goes a long way. And I find that in the beginning, any photographer tends to make this mistake when they're first learning how to edit photos, whether it be on a phone or whether it's in Lightroom or Photoshop. You'll find when you're newer, you just really like the ability to change it and to see, oh, I can have this wonderful effect on this photo. And you tend to take it a little bit too far. So I would say less is more. If you're going to add some light, just add a little bit. If you're going to add contrast, just add a little bit. If you're going to apply a skin smoothing filter, for instance, those are fantastic, but just do a little bit. Otherwise, nobody looks that perfect in real life, and it becomes very obvious because nobody's skin is completely smooth from forehead to chin. There's depth and there's contrast. Everyone has laugh lines for the most part, and those things are what make a person unique and wonderful. So those things are so good to have in the photo. I think we've all seen the chive articles with the horribly retouched photos that the Photoshop fails, and you'll see like the problems where somebody pinches in their waist too small and you see the distortion on all of the objects around them. Yep. So my advice is to just tweak it a little bit and be real.
Okay. Authenticity is a good place to go. And I do agree. Like I've seen them where, you know, the person looks like a plastic doll and I'm just like, is that nice? Doesn't look good to me, but you know, everybody's different. What about, so like you were talking about like the magic hour and all that. Now I do a lot of photos with houses and, you know, sometimes it's me, sometimes it's somebody else. What should we be doing if we're looking to sell a house and we want it to look like $1 million? Should we be focused on that magic hour you were referencing just before dusk?
I think the golden hour is more applicable to people photography, families, children, portrait photography, that kind of thing. That's not to say you can't take amazing photos at any time of the day. As far as buildings go, I think you need to just be cognizant of where the sun is to what your subject is. So if you're talking about a house and you know you've got this great sunset going on behind the house, it absolutely looks great. It may not showcase the house the way you want it to, so I think it's a judgment call. You don't want things to be in shadow on the other side of that. So sometimes if the sun is going to be right behind your subject, it can create this beautiful sun flare, and a lot of photographers go for that with portraiture. With something that you're trying to show the details of, you may not want that bright light coming from right behind it. It'll distract from the details of the house that you're trying to show off. So maybe go for like a cloudy day where the clouds are very good at diffusing the sunlight that's coming in, and it'll actually not be too bright, and it makes the perfect filter from nature to get the details and still show off a great property.
Yeah, you got to be honest, I was really impressed with, so like I always basically like stare at your photography when it comes through because I just really appreciate it. And I never could quite figure out how you can get the sunset in the back and still have the lighting be great on the face and everything versus me. I mean, like I have a hard enough time taking a picture of a house without getting a terrible shadow somewhere. I did one a couple months ago and they had giant like cumulus clouds over it. It looked so ominous. I had to go back later and retake the picture. I was just like, listen, I know it looks bad. We can get it live or we can wait for the perfect shot. Which one do you want to do?
Well, and what people need to also understand is Photoshop is part magic. And I only say magic because when you're new and you're just starting to play in Photoshop, it can seem extremely overwhelming and extremely daunting. And you're just like, I give up. I don't know the first place to start. So over time, and you know, you can take some online tutorials and there's tons of great YouTube videos that show you how to do certain things, but you can in fact replace the sky in a photo if the sky is not what you want it to be. So you can take a cloudy sky and replace it with a bright blue sky for the sake of the photograph. And it does take some work and some tweaking, but it's completely possible. And the same thing with when you are getting the sun flare and you have people in the photo and you still want to be able to see their faces brightly. That's more of a setting on a camera and being able to play with manual mode and adjust your ISO, adjust your aperture speed, and adjust your shutter speed. And all of that can create the ability to brighten up faces if you need to, if they come across in the original file as being too dark. Okay. So that's a lot of Photoshop magic for the most part. That being said, you can still get a great photo without having to play too much. It's just a matter of making sure the sun is not coming directly into the lens of the camera and turning your subject a little bit so that the sun is maybe hitting part of their face, but not the entire face and not directly on their face.
And why not directly in part of the face?
Because that tends to blow out the face. Direct bright sunlight on anyone's face is going to cause it to be very bright in a photo. And it creates shadows. And shadows are traditionally very unflattering. So we want to try to avoid too many shadows on faces versus bright light on faces.
Okay. So I'm running around, I'm chasing after the munchkins. Should I just leave my phone then on like auto? Is that what you're saying? And it'll make all these adjustments?
Yes, leave it on auto, the auto setting on your phone or even on a DSLR camera. There's a setting for automatic settings on a DSLR camera, and that'll automatically adjust to make the best choices based on the setting that you're in. So if you're a novice and you're just wanting to get some photos, absolutely auto. If you're a novice and you want to start learning more about photography, there's absolutely put your camera on manual mode and just try different things. And, you know, if you have questions, I'm always open to answering questions for anybody. But there's tons of websites out there for beginners that kind of explain to you like what settings to start with based on your environment to learn how to shoot in manual mode with a DSLR camera, which gives you the most creative freedom in photography out of any particular other, you know, way to do it.
And just for everyone else, DSRL, is that what you said?
DSLR.
Yeah, there,
Yes.
whatever. It's all gibberish to me. What kind of camera is that? That's not a point and shoot cell phone.
That is not a point and shoot camera. So that's going to be a digital camera. And typically these are just camera bodies, and then they have detachable lenses on the front, and you can change out lenses based on what type of photography you're wanting to do at the moment. So these give you a lot of creative freedom. They come in lots of different companies and models based on your skill level. There's a lot of great beginner models, there's advanced models, and they all have different features and options for what your skill level is and what you want to start with.
Okay. And that's why, I mean, I'm speculating, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's why people often then end up hiring photographers to take care of these stuff. So like, because there's no denying, like my photos, when I take them of a house, it's never going to be as good as what you do. And I think some people have a hard time grasping what that reason is. And I think it's a blend of all that composition, the abstract things that we're talking about, like what is the art of photography, as well as the practical stuff. I mean, my phone can't touch that monster, can it? I'm assuming.
No. And the thing is, like, they're upgrading cameras on phones constantly. Like my husband just got a new phone. Apparently Samsung jumped from like the S10 to like the S20. They skipped a whole lot of numbers in the middle.
Wow.
I was very confused. There's like 4 cameras on this thing. You can put it into different modes to make the background blurry, like a digital camera with the right lens could do. There's different effects that the different cameras have. So they're always trying to make it as good as a professional digital camera. The biggest difference is that with the DSLR, with the detachable lens, you just have a little bit more option. With any kind of lens that has what we call focal length, which is how big your lens is and how far away from the camera body it extends. The farther these lenses go from the camera body, the more of that good bokeh effect you can get in your photos, which is like the creaminess to the background. Cameras on phones can emulate that, but they don't quite normally have it exactly right. So you can come very close to it, but a lot of times you have a lot more control if you're trying to get it on a digital camera versus a phone.
That makes sense. Yeah. I've also seen that be a problem where like any of the photos you've ever taken for me, and I was just like, oh, let me just blow that up and see if I have a cavity in that tooth. It just keeps expanding and expanding. It goes forever. Versus the stuff I have on my cell phone, you know, I enlarge it 50% and now all of a sudden it looks like garbage. So
it's one of the benefits of taking photos with a camera with very many megapixels and editing it and saving it again as a larger file. It gives a lot more ability to zoom and to play. So huge benefit.
Yeah. So then, all right. So average person roaming around trying to take pictures that look nice, maybe not quite as nice as yours, or maybe not as large of a file for editing. Does it matter if I'm on an Android versus an iPhone? You know, what platform should I be using? How should I be storing these files?
I don't think that the Android versus phone matters too terribly much. They both have upgraded immensely over the last few years, and they both have fantastic cameras on the phones. The one thing I will say is back up your photos, no matter what platform you're using, whether you're doing on your phone, whether you're doing on a point and shoot camera or a DSLR, whatever you're doing, save your photos, back them up. I have like a 2 terabyte external hard drive that I save everything to as a backup because I don't want to lose them. And then on that same point, anything I take with my phone gets backed up to Google Photos as well. So even if I change phones at some point, I don't have to worry about losing all the photos that I've taken on my phone because they're automatically backed up to Google Drive. And I learned that the hard way at one point by losing a lot of photos. So
I believe that. I've lost
yes.
plenty of files, but I don't have the same collection of photos that you do. So is there something special about Google Photo that you use that versus some of the other platforms?
No, it's just I've always been a Google person, and with having a Gmail account, it's a free way to store your photos, and there's settings in your phone that if you download that particular app or that it automatically uploads everything from your phone photo-wise into that backup file. So it's not something I have to think about. It's not something I have to remember to do every so often. It automatically gets brought over into Google Drive.
Okay.
So
I think Google Drive has like a 15 gigabyte limit on like the standard profile. Is that enough?
It may. That's a really big amount that you
Okay.
can fill up. Phone photos tend to be a little bit smaller. So if you do run into a size limit, I do recommend having a backup hard drive that you can, once things are on a Google photo app, you can put it on a computer and transfer everything to a backup hard drive if you want to. But
yeah,
it's worth doing.
Especially if it's family photos. You don't want to be losing 10 years worth of history.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
That would be
And
awesome.
that's the other thing I wanted to remember to say during this whole thing is, I know that there's a lot of people who are hesitant to spend the money on a good photographer for family photos.
Yeah.
I know that it can be expensive, it can be cost prohibitive to do frequently, but I would say find a photographer. It doesn't have to be me. It could be any photographer that you feel comfortable with. Take a look at their work. Most photographers have websites, Facebook pages. Take a look at their work, see if it's a style that you feel like you like, and then put the investment in once a year, once every 2 years to have family photos done. It's something that you will absolutely regret not doing when your kids are older. I mean, just looking at how like the photos that I've taken of your family, how the kids have changed from like 4 years ago up through current year. I mean, it's just, and to have those memories and to have all of you together and the various playing that we do during sessions. Like I do a couple of post photos and then we typically let kids do their own thing and interact together. And if they're sitting next to each other and one's looking at the other and poking or like, doing what kids do, like that's them. They're being themselves. And now you have a memory of that permanently that you can go back and look at 15, 20 years from now. And it's a reflection of who they actually were more than the posed photo where everyone's looking and smiling at the same time. That's a personal style choice that I make with my photography. I'd rather have some of that candid behavior captured so that you can remember them as they were at this particular moment, rather than the posed photo that they're great, they're beautiful for the most part, but that's not always an accurate reflection of who the family is and what the dynamic is and what the relationships are. Some of the best moments that I capture are the ones where no one knows I'm taking a photo. Yeah. I'm testing the light. I'm just kind of playing with my camera while everyone's waiting to get started, and I'll take a couple shots. And sometimes those end up being the best photos because it's you and your family. It's you and the kids. It's the dynamic that just exists naturally. So it's that organic kind of piece that I really appreciate with family photos. So my little tangent is get the family photos done. Yep. Whether, no matter who you use, get the photos done. You won't regret it. And mom and dad sometimes feel self-conscious and don't want to be in photos with the kids. They just want photos of the kids themselves. That's crap. Parents should always be in photos. If not for yourself, do it for your kids, because when they're grown-ups, they all have that memory of what they remember you as from that time frame. Your kids don't care what you're wearing. They don't care if you have 15 pounds you need to lose. They don't care what your hair looks like that day. They don't care. They love interacting with you and being in that photo with you, and then they have that memory for the future to hold on to and to show their kids, or to, God forbid, one day remember you by. It's something that you're doing for them. It's not just for yourself. So that's my little piece.
No, and I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't know how I was going to touch on that. But yeah, I mean, like my favorite photos from our time together have been those moments that you're referencing. And while we were getting ready for this, I was like thinking about it, and I was looking back at some of the old photos for inspiration about what we talk about. I got to tell you, some of the smiles that you got on the kids in those candid moments, oh, they're huge. And that's the stuff that I would argue we see on a day-to-day basis when we're up there goofing off with them or having fun or whatever, the horseplay that we get into. The stage stuff, that's Stacy. That makes her happy. And that's good. I'm glad. It looks.
And there's nothing wrong with a nice
Correct.
post photo where everyone's looking and smiling. That has its purpose too.
Correct.
But I'm just saying I do some of that, and then I think it's also important to capture the authentic personalities as well.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I love it so much, because it does get those dynamics. Like, as much as Will and Charlotte are constantly butting heads with each other, you also have those moments when, like, you had one shot where they were basically laughing at each other about some joke they did. Or I remember there was one we did in a field, and like, I think Will basically assaulted me from behind, and then like, fell over, and the twins were roaring, and you like snapped a shot of it, and it was just perfect, because that's basically what we are, a giant tornado running through on a day-to-day basis. So it was heartwarming, it was touching, it encapsulated a larger thing in a more perfect picture. And the only reason I say that is because there was no spaghetti sauce on our shirts in that day. There usually is.
Well, I don't tend to photograph with spaghetti sauce present, so you're safe.
Yeah, well, then we should make a setting for that. That's what I'm thinking. We'll just get like an industrial kitchen, and we'll just have people funnel through, and you can take shots of them being covered in disaster, applesauce,
Awesome.
oatmeal everywhere. Something with some
Do
good
it.
texture, right? That's what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, take photos of your kids, like in moments that you wouldn't necessarily think to do it. Something that I've been trying to remember to do during quarantine is to pick up the camera every day if I can and just capture something that we're doing as a family. So if we're making, muffins one evening after dinner and everybody's baking, and I know it's hard in those moments sometimes because you get very focused on, let's do this task, let's move to the next thing, let's go to the next thing. But pausing for a second to pick up your phone, pick up your camera, something just to kind of capture some of those moments, that's huge. Like, you're doing something, you're together, and it's a memory that you guys can have then for forever, to go back and, oh, this is what we did during quarantine, this is what we did the day we went outside, or we went on the nature walk, or we saw this cool bird in the backyard. Like, those are all incredible memories to save and to hold on to. So it's remembering those kinds of moments when you wouldn't necessarily think to pick up your camera, but create a habit to pause and do it anyway. I've actually been keeping my camera very handy during this time frame. I'm not putting it away. I'm not putting it back in my bag. I'm leaving it out in the kitchen available, because I'm trying to remind myself to pick it up at least once a day to try to, snap a memory and remind the kids of what we did during this time, because it's an unprecedented time. I want them to have good memories of the fun things that we managed to do.
Well, and that's really interesting. Because I also we spoke recently about John picking up the camera as well and starting to take pictures, and how that is, I don't know what the right words are. You probably have some very classical photographer word for it, but like the eye of the beholder, like who's the point of view are you taking? Some of the great shots we have are also with the kids just roaming around. They'll say, "Hey, Dad, can I have your phone?" And they'll walk around and they'll just click, 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 and take like 150 shots. But every now and then they get an amazing one.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's your perspective or John's perspective or your kids, you're right. I mean, it's just capturing these special moments of the family.
Yeah, we've actually made it into sort of a family pastime at this point. Bennett has always wanted to do what I'm doing. So I, at one point, gave him for his 5th or 6th birthday an old point and shoot camera that we just had laying around that we weren't using anymore. And it was like this most treasured possession of his for a long, long time. And it finally died this past year. Like the little lens wouldn't pop out anymore when you turned it on and whatever. So we ended up getting him a nicer one for the holidays this past year. And it's amazing to me that both of my kids now have the interest in photography that they do, because as soon as my camera comes out, they're like, oh, let me get my camera. Let's go on a walk. Let's see what we can find to take pictures of today. And so John's kind of like the last member of the family to get on board with that, but he's enjoying it too. So he's using an old camera body of mine and an old lens, and it's kind of fun. It's a family hobby and something I absolutely recommend. I mean, kids love doing this stuff. It's a creative outlet. It teaches them all kinds of things. They look for things in nature. They look for patterns and texture and what does a water droplet look like on this blade of grass. And it kind of gets them to take a step back and find the beauty in something that could be very common, very everyday. And it's something that takes on a lot more meaning when you look at it up close and you study it and you're trying to get a picture of it and just get the right angle. So those are all incredible lessons that we can teach our kids, even with a cell phone camera.
Jeez. Okay. I need to step up my game as a parent. I'm dropping the ball. So one of our daily routines is Stacey will sit down with the kids every day, because one of the things I do like about social media a whole lot is they send like the reminders of this is what you did a year ago. And that's what their routine is, part of their daily routine. Any reminder that comes up on her Facebook feed, she's like, hey, who wants to sit down and watch the video I recorded a year ago or 5 years ago? So
Yeah.
I think that would work, especially for Will, because he has a short attention span. So whether it's just 5 seconds for him to take one photo, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
At least it's a little bit more in terms of that creative outlet. Versus we were trying to get him coloring earlier, and he was just like, "Yeah, just one color. That looks perfect." It was
Yep.
doesn't work.
It's interesting from this time period too, because I hear a lot of parents and see a lot of posts on social media with kids being bored and just all the screen time and everything else. And like, it's an interesting idea for a scavenger hunt, is to give a kid who's maybe a little, like not a little kid, but 7, 8, 9, 10, give them a cell phone or give them an old camera and let them roam around and, find a picture, take a picture of a dandelion, then take a picture of a rock with different colors, take a picture of a bird. There's lots of different ways you could spin that, but it's an interesting aspect to what we can do during quarantine to stay active and stay creative and maybe incite a little bit of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, if they locked in with some kind of electronic device, I'd rather have them locked in on one that involves creative aspects than locked in on one that results in them zoning out. So
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense. We'll do the rainbow. I want to see every color. Go out. Don't come home until you've got a shot of each.
Sounds great.
What about printing pictures? So Stacey is obsessed with this. She's on like Shutterfly, like basically every day, printing new books. Do you have like a good outlet where we should go for printing, what we should focus on printing?
So as far as prints, it depends on what you want to do with them. If you're just, if you're going to put them on your refrigerator and you just want a 5x7, anywhere. Walmart prints pictures. You can do like Shutterfly. You can do any of those online companies. If you want something that's going to hang on your wall, I personally have had good luck with canvases. I use Canvas on Demand. For smaller prints, I've used MPix, MPIX. And sometimes if I'm feeling like I'm not sure how I feel about this company's work, I'll send one picture to print and see how it comes back and make sure that the colors are all calibrated and make sure that they're printing an accurate representation of everything that I've put into the photo. One really interesting new medium that I've been using to print some, and I actually just printed my first photo this way, but there's companies that are printing on aluminum. And so it's a very pretty look for some photos. It doesn't work well for all photos, but there tends to be a lot of color saturation with it. So anything with nature or bright popping colors, it actually has come out really, really gorgeous. So I would highly recommend, if you have something that you want to print, look for a coupon code. Groupon does them from time to time, but look for some aluminum prints. You can get them as small as 5x7 or as big as, I've got a 20x16. So.
And it's just like a traditional picture. It's just printed on aluminum instead of fabric or paper or something, correct?
Canvas or paper or anything else.
So what's the appeal? Why are they using aluminum?
It's shiny. It's naturally very shiny.
Okay.
It has a very smooth finish to it. It just looks very polished and very gallery ready. So for the right photo, it works very, very well. Look into it.
Well, I'll probably tell Stacey to look into it. She prints everything that we do. I'm just like, it's good. It's backed up. We're fine. That's interesting. So the photography thing, we talked a little bit about this earlier. You're talking about how you can find a good one. You should go at least once a year, every other year at the worst case scenario if you can't afford to do it on an annual basis. Is there anything we should be mindful of when interviewing photographers to make sure we have a good one, or like consideration when it comes to copyright, et cetera?
Yeah, most photographers now, as far as I'm aware, will give any sort of copyright, print release, that kind of thing, if you do need a print release. I've personally never been asked for one when I've printed photos. If you need one, they are available. You want to talk to the photographer though up front. Talk about what their personal style is. When they're doing family photos, do they do more candid photos? Do they do more posed? Where do they typically shoot their photos? Make sure that you agree on a location and that, if this is a location that they've used in the past, they can show you via their other work what photos they've gotten at that place. So you can kind of get an idea of what you're going to be looking at. I tend to shoot, like you were saying, in open fields with lots of tall grass, trees, that kind of thing. There's photographers who are fantastic in an urban setting. There's photographers who are fantastic in a mix of both. It just really depends on their style, and you have to look at the style that they've exhibited in their past work and make sure that if you're asking them to do something different, they're comfortable with it. That being said, I mean, there's a big personality piece there that also has to click. So if your photographer and your personality doesn't mesh, sometimes it can be hard to communicate during a photo shoot of what they're asking you to do versus maybe what you had in mind, and the communication just maybe isn't there. So definitely have some conversations with them. I know in this day and age, so much is done via text and email, but it doesn't hurt to pick up the phone and get them on the phone and just have a preliminary conversation. It is an investment. It's potentially hundreds of dollars that you're putting into these photos. So you want to make sure that you're compatible together, because it's a team effort. Photography is always a team effort. So.
Well, and the last thing you want to do is stand in front of somebody that you're paying and feel uncomfortable, and that you're getting not the end result that you want. I mean,
right.
Just cause a lot of angst. And I don't think the photographer wants to be there at that point either.
The other thing too is, especially if you have young children, talking to the photographer in advance, how comfortable is the photographer with young children? Because there's usually certain times of the day where younger children are better than at other times of the day. So while we may be going for a certain golden hour sunset kind of time frame, if the child's melting down because that's their typical dinner time or their nap time, it's not going to be a good time. You'd rather get the photo during a different time of the day and have the child be cooperative and alert and happy. So these are all conversations that should be had with a good photographer to make sure that everyone's going to be at their best.
Unless, of course, you want to capture reality and it involves the child melting down.
We have a couple of those, Eric.
With us, I'm not surprised. I don't remember them specifically. I tend to block out those things. It's funny. I actually, part of the other dynamic that I like about what we have done is I don't think I've ever picked a location, and I'm thrilled about it, because usually when I go out, I'm really impressed with them. Or I look at it and I'm like, I don't really understand it. And then I get the photos. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is cool.
Oh, I'm glad.
This is why I like working with professionals, because it's so much easier instead of me trying to like figure it out on my own. Or like, you do the job. You tell me what's smart.
We've gotten to the point now where when we drive anywhere as a family, like I'm like, John, slow down. Like, I want to take this field is perfect. This is a phenomenal field. The sunset's in the right place. Yeah. The tall grass is perfect. Like, hold on a second. And he's like, oh, you can't use this field. Come on, we're going to keep driving. And I now go on like photo locations, scouting hikes with my kids. They don't know it. I'm like, we're just going for a walk. Yeah. And meanwhile, I have my camera and I'm taking test shots covertly everywhere we go to see like what would work and what wouldn't work. But you know, I'm always open to finding new places and trying new things, and it's a good time. There's nothing that facilitates a photographer's growth like being a little bit uncomfortable, learning something new. You know, you kind of push yourself a little bit to really expand your capabilities when you go a little bit outside your comfort zone. So, you know, going to do an urban session when you're normally doing stuff in a field, fantastic. It's a lot of fun. So always something new and different.
Yeah, well, and that's where the professional headshot that I have came from, that everybody sees and always raves about. That was actually taken, I think it was in Easton, if I remember.
Yes.
And you were just like, meet me here. And I'm all roaming around. You accused me of walking right past your car, which I think I did, if I remember correctly. But you found some great spots. And I don't know if it's the same location, but I've seen some of the other photos where they've got like murals in the background. It's great. It's like a really fun contrast that helps the image pop in a weird way. You know, I can think of a lot of other examples, but you know, our house is another example. There's a lot of colors in the house that I would have never picked, but once I got in it, I set it up. I was like, yeah, all right, I can work with this. And I feel it's the same thing, because I would never think to take a professional shot and make it like this vibrant, like urban environment in the background, but it just looks so good.
Yeah, all of the different colors and textures really add something to the photo. just the additional composition there with having brick or having cobblestone, or like the signs that in Easton in certain areas, like they have like signs for some of the businesses that kind of hang down and they look a little bit retro and vintage, and it's fantastic. And Easton and Bethlehem have actually done a fantastic job of allowing artists to paint murals on some buildings and some locations. And I actually did an engagement session in Bethlehem in front of a brand new mural, and it just, some of those shots just came out so well. I was so excited about doing them, and I'm always like, can we find a reason to go do a family session in front of a mural somewhere, because it's gorgeous.
That's funny. Well, and I think that goes back to like the same ice cream thing. You just keep trying different flavors until eventually you find a few that you really like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
I guess murals are one of your things now. So
yeah, kind of.
Be in a field, is it?
We will see. Let's see what kind of mural I can find for you.
Is there a mural of a train wreck? Sorry. I was just trying to think. It was like our kids would go bananas. I think our kids, we could bring chalk and I'd watch them like scribble over it or something like that. Charlotte would be distracted with the flowers.
Whatever works.
Yeah. Well, I'm not complaining. I didn't show her the pictures because she'd want to go there. That's what we were doing. Literally, we were painting butterflies, and she was talking about colors and patterns, and I need to get her a camera apparently.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, there's no mess to clean up with a camera.
Yes, that is true. But I need to get one that's hardy, so when they drop it or throw it across the room, it doesn't break, because that's going to be the ever-present fear then.
Yes. Well, my in-laws did get my daughter, who's 4, a small pink, I don't remember who makes it right now, but it's like a toy camera, but it does take actual pictures. So it's like something low, like 4 or 5 megapixels, I think. So nothing of high quality, but she carries that thing everywhere. And we get photos of things all over the house, and she loves it. So like there's definitely something for all levels, all age groups.
Well, and you also said with cell phones, I thought that was a really clever solution, because I don't know what other people do, but it's not uncommon for us to have a spare cell phone laying around the house. You don't have to connect it to a service provider. You just power that baby on, have the kid walk around, take some photos, and it's fundamentally just a little computer or a little camera. Yes. So that could be a good way to get them started, or just order one off of Amazon. I haven't looked at them recently, but I bet the old models are pretty cheap.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, just don't get a cracked screen. That's all.
Pro tip.
Yeah, pro tip. Well, thank you so much. Are there any other things that you want to bring up while we have the time?
No, I don't think so. I just my biggest thing is pick up your camera, pick up your phone. Just document your days and document the time you have with your families, with your kids, whether they want to be involved in photos or not. They will not regret it years from now. So, great advice. Take pictures, people. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, like you said, you're okay with them circling back with you afterwards, either connecting with you Facebook or whatever platform you are at. And if you're looking for inspiration, please go check out our websites. I will have them in the comments below. I'm telling you, the photos are fantastic. You'll even see a whole lot of shots of my family too. I know you're all interested. Thank you very much, Lindsay. I appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day. You too.